Hey scholars, so in the last video we did a simple guessing game on the console using Pascal to show some of the similarities and differences between Pascal and Python. At the end of that video I told you that we would get into some GUI programming in Pascal, some rapid application development, which is what Lazarus is for. So that's what we're going to do in this video. So I want you to open up Lazarus. The standard way Lazarus opens up is with an application in the code window. What I told you to do last time was to open up a new project and go to simple program. So the programs that we wrote, the Hello World program, the guessing game program, we're using standard Pascal, basically circa the early 1970s, which is when Pascal was originally invented. And the form of those programs are basically the same back then as they are today. You have program with the name of the program, the begin and end blocks for the program itself, and also begin and end blocks for procedures and functions, and also for loops as well. So when you open up Lazarus, you usually get the template for an application. And unlike the previous programs, the GUI application is a unit, which is part of a larger program. So all your code is going to be written in this unit, which is basically a module. I think in the previous video I may have mentioned when we say uses, these are modules or libraries, they're actually called units inside of Pascal. So we are going to write our code in this unit. These right here on line 3 are commands to the compiler, the free Pascal compiler that we're using to compile our code. This is telling it to use modern Pascal or Object Pascal, which allows us to do object-oriented things like create classes and objects and things like that. You guys are familiar with objects and classes from Python, but also from your work with JavaScript. This compiler directive tells the compiler to use extended string types and dynamic arrays, which is also going to be used when we create GUI programs. The interface is the public face of the unit that we're creating. So this section basically says what types and names, like form1, which I'll talk about in a minute, other files in the project can see. We, as you can see here, are importing other units. And as we get to something that actually uses the particular unit, I'll highlight it, so I won't spend much time explaining what all of these do right now. Right here is where we're actually defining the class for the form, and you can actually see the form here, and I'll get back to that in a moment. It has a private section, public section, and this will make more sense as we go on as well. Variable here, we're defining a global variable that will hold the instance of the form, so the actual window. And then most of our code that we'll write will be under this section, the implementation section. So it'll be under the implementation section and under this right here, which is another compiler directive. This is basically just telling the compiler to use all the information from the form that we have over here in the program. Again, this will make more sense as we start actually doing things. We're going to actually create a simple program right now, and we're going to call it, this is basically just going to be a simple hello program. In Pascal, you can do comments like this. This is why we can put a command to the compiler here, because in old Pascal, these are usually ignored. So the new compiler looks for these plus a $sign to see whether or not it's getting it to turn features on or off. But if we just use these brackets without a $sign, we can actually put a comment here. So I'm going to put a comment about what we're going to write. We're just going to write a simple hello GUI program. It's going to open a form, let user enter name, and click button and give them a message. Okay, so that's what the program is going to do. So let's start with actually designing our form. We haven't written any code yet, and we could actually still compile it because, as I said, when we first set up the application, Lazarus actually sets up a lot for us by default, and the form is already created for us as well. It's right here. So if I compile this program, I'm just going to press OK to use that debugger. You'll see a program actually is created. This is the form that we can design over there. We're actually going to start putting some things on the form now. So you can put components or objects on the form from this menu up here, which is organized into different component groups. So these are the standard ones. I'm going to start with a button. and I'm going to drag it across here. You'll notice when I clicked on the button, it also highlighted it over here. Typically, I actually just do a search for the component over here. We have over here the code explorer in the component library. I typically know what I'm looking for, so I can just click over here and then or search for what I need, and then I use this. But if you want to use the components that are up here, it doesn't matter. Either one is fine. All right, so I'm going to create a button here, and you'll notice over here in the component panel, there are a bunch of properties and also events for the component that we're working with. Before I edit the properties for the button, I'm going to edit one of the properties for the form itself, which the button is sitting on. So as you guys know from object-oriented programming, classes have properties and they also have actions or methods. And when we're talking about GUI programming, those methods are usually called events. So the various properties that we could tweak here, and if you click on any one of them here, there is a panel down here that explains what each one of them does and what values you could put in there. This is just a caption that shows up on the window itself. So I'm just going to call this hello program. This is for the form. Let me make this a little smaller. And if I run this, you'll notice that my button showed up. It doesn't do anything because we had to write some code for it to do something, but it changed the caption to hello program. Okay. All right. So let me stop this and let's do a little bit more here. So I'm going to change the caption for the button as well. I'm going to just have it say click me. All right. What I'm going to do next is actually add a edit box. And as I said, I'm going to go over here and just search for it instead of trying to find it up here. So I want to edit box. I'm going to drag to create it here. And there is no caption here for the edit box, but there is text inside the box. And that's what I want to change. So that's the property that I want to change. So it says edit one now. I'm going to say enter your name. Okay. So that's all I'm going to do for this form for right now. As I said, each one of these components has a lot of different things that we can change. I dragged to create the size of this button, but if I wanted to change it to something else, say 166 to 160, I can make it a little bit smaller. Where it is placed on the actual form is controlled by its top position and its left position. So it's 170 pixels down from the top and 80 pixels over from the left. And as I said, there are other things that we could change as well. All right, so I center this a little bit and align it with that. And if I run this now again, we have a program. It doesn't really do anything, but it does have a button that we could click. And it also has a text box that we could put our name in. Nothing will happen because, again, we haven't written any code. All right, to write some code, what we can do is edit the events. So you can get to the events for each one of these components in different ways. You can turn them on here. These are all the events related to the edit box, the button itself. We even have events related to the form as well. We're not going to use any of the events related to the form or the edit box in this simple program, but we will use one of the events related to the button. So you can do this in two different ways. You can either go here and click here and then press this and it'll create a procedure for us, or you can just click on the button itself and it'll jump us over to our code and we can actually start writing our code. Before we start writing our code, notice a couple things. Like I said, it put it in the implementation section down here. So that's where most of our code is going to go. Up here, you'll notice that the editor, the form editor, added the button and also the edit box to our class, and also added the procedure that we're going to edit to our class as well. Okay, for this procedure, I am going to create a variable that will be local to just this procedure. I'm going to call it a name, and it's going to be a string. And then we are going to assign a name to the value of the edit box. So edit one, if you press the dot here, it'll show you all the properties of the edit box and also all the events. I want the text, which, as you remember, we changed that to enter your name. I want to assign whatever is in the text box to our variable, a name. And then I'm going to show a message. Okay. And the show message function, we get that from the dialogues that we imported at the beginning in the uses section. So as the pop-up showed, we have the message string. That's what this procedure takes. So I'm going to say hello and then plus a name. Okay. And that's the end of our basic program. If I run this, now it's a functional program. So if I were to just click this without changing my name, it's going to say, hello, enter your name. But I'm going to put my name in. Okay. And it works. Our simple hello program works. All right. So if you want to save this, you can go to Save Project. I would save it in your All Projects folder. You need to create a folder called Hello Basic. It's even more important to create a folder for your GUI programs because there's even more files that are related to your GUI programs than the command line programs that we created in the past. So create a folder for each one of your projects. I'm going to call this Hello Basic and you press save. And then it's going to ask you to save the specific unit that we actually put the code in. And you can just save it as unit 1. Each one of them, whenever we create a GUI, is going to be called unit 1, but as long as you have them in different folders or different directories, it doesn't matter. All right, so that's it for this program and this video. What we're going to do next is continue working with the GUI and do some simple animation in the GUI form. All right, see you in the next one.